Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the level 2 recording for July 18th, Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And I'm actually going to, Pedro's got a question in the chat, and I wanted to continue to answer a question from lovely participant Daniela, who had asked me these in email, but she's not logged on right now. But so wait, let me do this one first, because I only got to the question about concurrent lifetimes, but she also asked me very excellently about what about death in the fossil record. She says, hey, wait, Aurora, you're talking about 10 or 12,000 years ago, death was invented, right? And that's when everybody's chakras went wibbly wobbly, and then people started to actually die. But wait, there's fossil records from 100,000 years ago, from from 1,000,000 years ago, of things that died. Didn't things die before then? This is excellent. I applaud your skepticism, not skepticism, like I applaud like the critical thinking in your mind. Like, yes, don't just be magnetically influenced by whatever extrasolar bodies are going through the planet right now, going through our solar system right now, I should say, rather. And don't just believe in anything morally dubious. Actually use your mind and actually think clearly. Very, very good. So what I would say is that yes, the fossil records actually exist of evidence of the narrative story that brings us to this moment now. But that narrative is a construct, is what I would say. So, and I'm not a biblical literalist, because some people would be like, oh, this is like saying that the dinosaur skeletons were put there by God, but that the planet was really only created 5,000 years ago. I'm not on that level. I'm not on that level at all. But I'm on the level more of saying that the destruction of consciousness, the fall of levels of consciousness, was a literal movement from like one area of the time field to another area of the time field. And I would say like where we moved from was a timeline where there would not have been any fossil evidence of death. And where we moved to is a place where there is now evidence of death, as if death has always been in existence. This is pretty big, because I'm trying to give a new program that says death has not always been in existence. But you say, but look, I look at all these different things, like here's a fossilized amoeba from 1 billion years ago, right? That's clearly, according to your narrative, before death was invented. But I would have to say the time before death was invented would then predate that 1 billion years ago. So we're using language to talk about something that is not easily understood with language. It's like songs that don't match up. Is the best way that I'm trying to say it. There's a dimension in a realm where death doesn't exist and has never existed. And if you dug deeply there would be no fossils, there would be no physical records or anything like that. But we literally live in a world where death was invented, but now it appears as if death has always been inevitable, that it was part of the original plan. But it's not part of the original plan. It got written in, and what's the best way I can say it? Like if you have a new script writer of a new, same series, but it's a new script writer, and now we're just going to retroactively backdate this whole entire story that the new script writer is writing that includes death, in order to make it say, oh, death has always been part of it, and it's always part of the cycle of death. Like now we live in this denser reality where it appears as if death is part of life. How about this? Hey, Aurora, what about compost? If there's no death, how can anything grow? Because there's no compost, there's no microbial growth. That's exactly right. Everything works differently in a world where there is no death. We don't have a compost heap. I'm not digesting my banana peels and feeding them to my rose bushes. So how do roses grow? In a different way. Everything functioned differently. So that was the answer to Daniela's questions. Now getting to Pedro's questions. Wait. Pedro, so this was in reference to what I said in level 1. He says, if the Putis say, F you, God, does that mean that some aspect of God hates himself, or is it a way for God to get better? This is very, very big, because this has to do with what people in the modern New Age world are calling, quote unquote, shadow work. Did something that I think is a hugely unhealthy distortion that I could rant about for several hours. I will not rant about it for several hours, I promise you. But no, so okay, shadow work of what I perceive is going on in the New Age world is people identifying with their pathogens. In your physical body right now, each one of us you have your physical cells that contain your DNA, they're part of you. Then you've also got, oh look, I got microbes in my tummy. That microbes in my tummy, that's good, that helps me to digest my food. There are 5 trillion of them in my body. They don't have my DNA, but they're not pathogenic. They help me out. They're allowed to be here. They're cool roommates, right? Then we also have trillions of unwelcome ride-alongs, hobos and, you know, squatters and things that aren't supposed to be there. They're pathogenic, that would love to eat you alive and harm you if they could. And the point is, you don't identify with those things as self. They're pathogens. They're in you, but they're not you. That's very, very big. If you have an infection that's full of pathogenic bacteria, do you claim it and say, oh, pathogenic bacteria, I love you and I understand your journey through life and you're really part of me? You say, no, get the F off of me. You're not supposed to be here. Stop eating my flesh. That is what we all need to do. And I like my head's going to explode, because what you don't need to do is hug the pathogenic aspects of self, hug the addictions, this is what I feel the shadow work is so distorted. I don't think that you're supposed to hug your pathogens and think of them as aspects of self. I think that thinking itself is pathogenic. If your white blood cells went up and said, hey, are you a pathogen? Your pathogen said, no, I'm an aspect of self. Hug me, hug me. And like, if then your white blood cells aren't doing their job. Your white blood cells are supposed to be like, no, you're a pathogen. It's my job to hug you and get you out of the body. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. So what we are supposed to do with our personalities is go through our own learning process and say, hey, these personality aspects and behaviors are healthy. These are unhealthy or pathogenic. Behaviors and personality aspects. This is different than saying who you are and what's your heart and everything like that. So you can say something like having a addiction, being addicted to tobacco. You could be like a good person. You've got these personality characteristics, but you've got this addiction over here. And you have to learn to separate yourself and not identify with your addiction and not say, this addiction is me. This is who I am. This is what I'm all about. Same thing with disease. When people personify their disease, when they say, my diabetes, my cancer, my condition, my this, my that, like, this is also pathogenic. This is not a way of, it is not embracing health. It is not healthy. So that in personality characteristics, in expressions of disease, I don't think that that is healthy at all. So I don't think that the answer is that, oh, God was the entirety of everything that was at that zeroth dimension, and that some aspect of God hated God's self and needed to be ejected. My proposition, my proposal to you is that this is like the nucleus of a cell that had good stuff in the DNA and then also pathogenic viruses or bacteria that are not supposed to be there, that got ejected. So I would say all the crap in the Bible, that is the fall of consciousness, the fall of the fallen angels, that's crapola that's not supposed to be there. That is not supposed to even be at that divine place, at that convergence point, in that God personality. And I would say perhaps it is a self-cleansing mechanism to ejectorino out all of the personality characteristics that are not supposed to be there. But they're supposed to go to entropy, which is a cold, dead, frozen state, not moving through time, not affecting anything in time, not affecting our lives or running as, you know, hidden programs within our own DNA or siphoning energy off of us or living on the membranes of death. None of that is an acceptable workaround for them to still have some state of existence. They're supposed to go, pathogens are supposed to go into a state of non-existence, non-existing. So that's what the singularity point here, this convergence point, it oscillates between a state of existing and non-existing. I'm here, I'm not here. I'm here, I'm not here. So all the stuff that is here is all the stuff that's supposed to be here. And all the stuff that is here is all the stuff that was never supposed to be in existence. All the poop, all the pathogens, all the wrong notes, all the crapola, all the whatever, ironically misfulfilled wishes, everything that's monstrous, it's all supposed to go into non-existence. So yeah, God does not hate God's self. God actually loves God's self profoundly. And this is also the distinction that we are making on the anthropomorphic level in our daily lives. Some people are God loving God's self, and I've met them, and it's beautiful. And they've helped me profoundly in my life, and I've given generously to them. Like, that's beautiful. And some people are pathogens, and that is it. And the pathogens run as programs, subsets within their own DNA software, and give them pathogenic behavioral expressions. And those are people who, like, you know, you might help them out, but they wouldn't reflect it back to you. They wouldn't help you out, you know, or maybe whatever. They'd be like, gimme, I'll only help you for $5, gimme, whatever. Someone's got a private question. Let me go to this. Oh my goodness. So Julia is describing her experience in Northern California being heavily inundated with chemtrails. Yeah, there are a lot of things you can do. I'll just do this really, really super fast. Lots of things you can do on a biological cellular level to fight against them, and a lot of consciousness practices too. So you can do chlorella. So in order to clear out heavy metals from your body, you got to eat cilantro. The cilantro will liberate the heavy metals from deep tissue in where it's been stored up in your brain and your, organs and stuff like that. But then you got to have some kind of detox substance that the stuff will stick to, the toxins that are being liberated. So I use chlorella. You can also use diatomaceous earth. You can also use bentonite clay. Those two give me a tummy ache. That's why I use chlorella. Find the one that works for you. So you have a regimen every day of eating at least a quarter of a cup of cilantro and taking some of these substances that have convoluted surface area in order to help to just remove the heavy metal detox. You can also do the stuff that is called the anti-nano bucket. I've gone over that in other videos, and I have one and I can show it to you more extensively. It is a way of zapping or frying the self-assembling aspects of the nano by using a pulsed magnetism and a bucket of water. You can also just get a pulsed magnetism apparatus device or do sessions with pulsed magnetism with the idea that it is like frying an old-fashioned floppy disk. You're removing the organizational memory factor of a magnetic storage device, and then it just becomes inert. So that's what you want to do. You want to fry your freaking nano. You can also just get some inexpensive neodymium magnets and put them at places like here where your blood is relatively close to the surface of your skin, and just hold them there for 20 minutes as another way of frying the nano. Shungite. I'm not a salesman for this company. I drink out of my shungite cup. I have shungite nuggets that are in my water dispenser. I'm big on drinking shungite, taking it internally, and putting it on my face. My face does not look like I've put black powdery crapola on my face. No, of course not, because I get very, very finely ground food-grade shungite that contains, tiny amounts of carbon-60, and I dilute it with my daily face moisturizer, and I put a little bit on, and it's cumulative. So you don't have to put on a giant amount. You just put on a little bit every day, drink the water every day. Shungite absolutely helps protecting against these EMF-based attacks. Also, get yourself a Faraday cage for your cell phone. Get yourself a smart meter cover. Yes, these things are expensive. I think it's totally worth it and will hopefully help you in your battles. And then let's talk about consciousness-based stuff. Merkaba is another energetic immune system that we can use to protect ourselves from shield ourselves from these attacks. And I use Merkaba all the time for that. And other consciousness practices. Hans is here, and if he's willing to share, he was telling me some of the things that he does in order to amp up his flying rainbow lasagna practice on his own. Like he's built this kind of steepled pyramid that he has over a chair that he feels amplifies what he's able to do. So connecting with fellow students and finding out what they do in order to kind of like amp up their practice. And Hans has done a bunch of telepathically frying the chemtrails. So there's a lot we can do is what I'm trying to say. There's things that you can eat, there's things that you can practice, there's things that you can envision, and your muscles grow stronger every time that you do it. So keep doing it, and please don't give up. And I'll talk to you more if you need all of that stuff. I know I went over it very fast. Email me, I'll tell you all of those things and the details of it. Pedro says, so the Ascension timeline, we were before the DNA hacking, didn't have fossils, but with the hack, we changed timelines, and those do have fossils. Yes, just remembered, yes. So wait, and I'll also tell you, when we changed timelines, we also found ourselves on this planet that everything changed and shifted. So where north, south, east, and west was all changed and shifted, where our major structures were from a higher dimensional reality perspective, changed and shifted. There were a lot of physical structures that we would have been able to point to and say, hey, remember that giant crystalline structure that was right there, that were intentionally sanitized. They were intentionally destroyed. So when we went, it's just like this. Hey, why do we have an alimentary tract? Why do I have a poop chute? Why, if we weren't originally designed to have to eat food and poop it out, why do I have this? These are like the answers to the questions. We're not in our original bodies. We're not on our original Earth. Yes, that is absolutely, your mind is working correctly, what you're understanding. So we're on like a projection or a shadow version. Here's the original, pristine version. It got destroyed. It got projected onto where we currently are, and where we currently are got totally distorted. And the distortions were not a natural thing. It was not just like, oh, there were earthquakes and lava and magma. There was some of that, but then there was also a very intentional, like, where's my eraser? I don't have an eraser. But just imagine a big giant eraser that went around. Oh, you got your furry overlord there. That's beautiful. I have lasagna fire, four-legged ones. I do every day. Cheeky does lasagna with me every day. But yeah, a giant industrial eraser, and they erased a bunch of things off of the surface of the Earth so that it would not be possible for humans to effectively put together the puzzle pieces of where they've been and what they've been experiencing. So the fossil record is heavily edited, and then what appears in scientific publications and museums is also heavily edited, and some of it is intentionally edited and some of it is just based on basic presumptions. So certain things, like if you have a collarbone and shoulders that are shaped like this, when you look at other organisms, you presume that they will have similarly shaped collarbones and shoulder structures, even if that would not be anatomically correct. So there's a lot of presumptions that were made by scientists putting together fossils in the fossil records, and a lot of things that are not accurate, but that's okay. That's, you know, like, we won't go too far into there. Miniman is also saying there's liquid zeolite, NCD2. It's the best. Zeolite is an excellent substance in terms of convoluted surface area and being able to remove heavy metals from the body. The only challenge is finding a source of it that is not contaminated and that is pure. It's got to be food grade and not contaminated. And I got a package of it off of an eBay store. Hold on a second. And when I tasted it, it tasted like burnt rubber to me. And I sent it back clearly. And to me, it tasted almost like a solvent. And so I'm wondering a couple of things. Some of these companies might be producing it in a way that it creates a toxic or solvent byproduct that might not be intentional, or these companies might be wanting to create a product that is intentionally helpful to humans that gets adulterated at some point in the either manufacturing or distribution process intentionally. Just like there are no air filters that effectively block out the chemtrail nanoparticles, that's intentional. They don't want you to be able to block them out. So if zeolite is an effective tool in the arsenal against chemtrails, the evil ones would make sure to want to contaminate the zeolite. So I would just say finding a source that is uncontaminated and that is trustworthy is the challenge to make sure on that, because it can also be contaminated with lead. So yeah, if you have a good whatever, yeah, the link to the Shungite store, Brandon's already got it. Again, like I say, I'm not a salesperson at all, but I have my links to my stores in Russia of people that I appreciate. So wait, and make sure I got through all these questions. No. So Pedro, last part of your question, this is awesome. When we ascend from Pedro, do we do it with our bacteria, and what else do we ascend with? Wait, read it better. When we ascend and we do it with our bacteria, what else do we ascend with? Other people, pets, favorite things. Everything ascends. This is really big and huge because you can't have fleas. After you ascend, if fleas are parasites and they feed off of blood of other beings, mosquitoes, fleas, tapeworms, there's no place for those things in a healthy ecosystem. Those things are all abhorrent. Viruses, there's no place in a healthy ecosystem of a fifth dimensional and higher reality for viruses. Viruses are semi-alive beings. They're kind of like demons. You're never going to get a common cold in the higher dimensional reality. But those poor, poor viruses, don't they deserve a place to live? No! No, they don't deserve a place to live. No, they're not a part of nature. No, they're not wonderful. No, they're not your shadow self. No, you shouldn't hug a virus. No, pathogens do not belong in heaven. You know, no fleas, no scavengers, no pathogens. The entire ecosystem changes because, once again, we don't have rotting garbage heaps. The only justification for the existence of certain organisms is, well, they break down trash. Dung beetles, they break down dung. There's no dung in this higher dimensional reality where we eat nothing but pure sunlight. So an organism is powered by pure sunlight. If there is a dung beetle, it doesn't actually eat dung, it just eats sunlight. It doesn't require the dung of other beings in order for it to be in existence. So all the beings that are pathogenic and all the beings that only exist to feed off of others don't exist in that higher dimensional reality. So thank you. So if your body ascends, transforms, metamorphoses into this higher dimensional state that is less dense and, you know, closer to light, all of the microbiome, everything that's on the surface of your skin changes too. Everything that's down your entire alimentary tract changes too. Everything that's in your bloodstream changes too. Everything that you've ever eaten changes too. Because look, I got chickens inside of me and whatever, cows, I've eaten hamburgers, all of the organisms that are inside of me, all of the vegetables and everything that I've eaten, that all changes too. Those are the building blocks that you got your rocket fuel from. It all changes and transforms. And the world around you changes and transforms too. So there's no way for you to be like, well, I've changed and transformed, but like now I'm sitting next to a rotting compost heap where, you know, like where I'm in an environment where things are still being broken down, you know, with microbial action. Like you're not going to be in a world that has microbial action. that you're going to be in a world that has completely different rules of reality, of what happens, of where things go, and of what things do, and you're going to have to learn those new rules. Guess what? You're never going to have your hair fall out ever again when you transform. You're not going to ever get new skin cells. You will never get your clothing dirty by wearing your dirty. You will never get epithelial cells or skin oils or body odors on your clothing. That will not be your experience. It's a completely different experience. You will never have to brush your teeth again when you have this metamorphosis, because you will not be using your mouth crystals to mash up potatoes to ferment them in the cauldron of your belly so that you can poop them out your poop chute. Like, that's not what life is like in the higher dimensional reality. You don't grow potatoes. We don't grow plants for the specific purpose of mashing them up with our tooth crystals. That's not why you grow a plant. You grow a plant because it makes beautiful movements as it grows, because it emits a smell or a tone or a song or some energy that you find nourishing. We feed off of something different. So it's a completely different approach. Okay, and Meaning Man is saying that this particular brand of zeolite is purified and patented, and it's good, but it ain't cheap. So that's good that you got a good thing. Share that with the rest of the class. Jeffrey says, are disabilities, oh, he wants to know about autism. Okay. Jeffrey, is it okay if I answer that? Because you asked that privately, is it okay if I answer that publicly? And Angel says, is there a way to transmute negative parasites, spirits, demons into another type of expression? It seems exclusive of the totality of creation to call them an aberration. If the dark does not exist, how would we know the light? That's another new age trope that is totally BS and worthy of being thrown out the window. No offense to you, Angel, because you're a lovely person. But the whole idea of, if we don't have darkness and shadow, how would we know the light? Well, the answer is, you can use color. And I get very worked up about all of this. So we don't live in a world of black and white. This is actually a good segue into the material for the class, because I haven't even gotten to the class yet, which is all about duality. You can signify in a higher dimensional reality different levels of energy by using different colors. Like, clearly you can see red is different than orange. Orange is different than yellow. Yellow is different than green. These two colors here have a different value, meaning one seems brighter than the other. Like, if I squint my eyes, these colors here look darker. These colors here look lighter. But the truth is, like, if you were visually impaired and could not perceive color, like if you were colorblind, all of these would look like the same tone. You would not be able to distinguish. There might be some difference in value between here and here. In a higher dimensional reality, when you're reading the map of time, you don't have to have darkness so that you have the contrast with the light. All you need to do is have different colors. You can have 100% light, but just have different colors of light so that you can navigate where you're going. It is a complete distortion to say darkness is our teacher. Darkness has to exist. Darkness has to exist in order for the contrast with the light. So now we are officially on level 2 information, and what I'm talking about is duality. And I got to go to the whiteboard. So this shape of the flying rainbow lasagna is the shape of non-duality. And a great deal of duality comes from this is from level 1. Hold on. Let me just drink a juice too before I get going on the marathon here. A great deal of the duality that we experience comes from the biological container that we find ourselves within. I know this because I'm not always within a biological container that has 2 eyes. And so I noticed, like, hey, here's a person with 2 eyes. I know this is a crappy drawing. 2 eyes. The way that we develop our perception of the world and build a sense of a map of the spatial reality around us is by comparing thing versus thing. And this has to do with our biological apparatus, the type of eye that we have, and how it is set in our skull. That we have 1 eye over here and 1 eye over here, and they're separated by a little bit of space. And what our perception of apparatus, our brain, does up here is it takes the calculations from over here and the calculations from over here and puts them both into the mental computer and makes a whole bunch of complex on the fly, in the moment calculations, and then develops a sense of building spatial reality based upon the slight differences of viewpoint from right eye versus left eye. So that's duality. Thing versus thing. Hey, let's talk about when you're a little tiny child, tactile sensation. Now let's say this guy over here that I just drew with the brain. It's a little tiny baby, right? Here's a little tiny baby, and baby. Oh God, sorry. Techno gremlins never fail to amaze me. There's a little baby in a crib over here. I'm a little baby in a crib, And the baby is figuring out self versus not self, self versus context in terms of tactile sensation. So the little baby touches itself and it's like, hey, I can feel that. That's me. And then the little baby touches, you know, the crib over here, says, hey, I don't feel that. That ain't me. Or usually, you know, they'll bite it. They'll bite it or put it in their mouth like, I feel that. Like, I don't feel that. That's not me. You're a baby, you know, like figuring out, exploring the world. Self versus context. And at a certain point, we develop a very clear sense of the map of self. My self extends to the edge of my epidermis and does not extend further. That means that if I put my hand over here and wiggle my finger, I don't expect to feel anything. There's nothing here. That's not me. But if I wiggle my finger over here like, oh, I expect to feel something, I know that that's me. Self versus context. Now let's talk about in your actual eyeball. Here I am drawing a rather horribly shaped eyeball. Let's start again. Here's a much healthier shaped eyeball. Here's the retina of your eyeball. And here's the lens and everything like that. So light enters into here and then goes over to here and is on the retina. The retina has these little cells, and the way that the cells work is they work through contrast. So there are these little cells, and then there are little cells all around the little cells. And when you see something that is super bright, your cells don't even have a way to say that it's super, super bright. So what they do is they have one cell that fires. Let's make the cell that is firing red. I'm firing to the brain. And then it inhibits a couple of the other cells. These little guys that are crossed out in blue, not only do they not fire, but they produce an inhibitory signal. So they make the red seem even, quote unquote, louder by comparison. So now as I'm describing this to you, I'll go back to my face so you can see things better. Contrast, the way that our eyes and eye cells perceive the world is via contrast. So where I am, I don't know if you can see, I'm kind of like gesturing here on the side of my face with my little cursor. Here, there's an area of brightness, and in art, we squint a lot. Squint your eyes, that kind of makes everything kind of blurry, and you can just see the general shapes. Oh, look, it's brighter over here, and then over here, there's a dark area. Oh, look, it's brighter over here where there's a shoulder, and then it's darker over here where there's a background thing. So our whole entire system of visual perception as human mammals with the type of lens eyes that we have is based in contrast, right? We're looking at edges, the edge of a thing versus a thing. So I know that there's a person here because I can see there's the edge of the shoulder. That's a different color and brightness than the thing that is behind it. Again, we use edges and contrast, thing versus thing, to develop a story, a visual story about the world, about what the world is shaped like, what objects are shaped like, and how things in the physical world can be perceived and how they behave. This is duality. Our whole entire existence in the biological container is based in duality and encourages us to think in dualistic senses. And then our culturalization in terms of ego structure also encourages duality. So that's not just the tactile sense. This is when I touch myself, I am touching myself. When I touch a thing, I'm feeling a thing. This is also in terms of self versus the world. Like, I'm named this, and these are my preferences, and this is my favorite stuffed animal, and that's you're you, and you ain't me, and you got your own preferences, and you got your own favorite teddy bear. And that whole idea also of making a distinction of self versus the world is about duality. So wait. So this is big because there's a lot of stuff. If people make this presumption, and again, I don't mean to come down hard on Angel at all. You're a lovely person. But this is also like justifying the existence of parasites or pathogens, or saying that they're there to be our teachers, or viruses are here to be our teachers, or darkness is necessary. No, because these are the basic precepts that I'm here to set straight. We were not put here to suffer. Suffering is not the best way for us to learn about stuff. The original approach or blueprint was for us never to have to suffer, never to have to die. We were never supposed to hit the membrane of death. We were never supposed to feel like, you can feel impending death, but if you don't have a steering wheel, that doesn't actually help you. You actually have to do something to actually change the direction that your life is going. And let me also just make sure I've got my notes up so I can see what's going on here. Yes, okay, I've got almost everything. And then I'll get into flying rainbow lasagna and non-duality. Inside versus outside, self versus context, thing versus thing. So there's almost a religious mania, a type of programming that kicks in where people say darkness is necessary, darkness is our teacher, we have to have darkness in order to be able to see the light. But we can definitely build a picture of reality that is based simply in colors, that is not based in darkness. So, I'm trying to think of an example. I could have a painting, like I do paintings that are 100% rainbow colored, where you can see, let me bring up an example. Let me find something. You can see all these different shapes that are in the painting. Does not involve black or white. Hold on a second. I'll go to share screen. Oh no, I gotta choose a different picture. Hold on a second. Thank you for bearing with me. Hold on a second. That's a much better example. Because I know everybody goes over my pictures with a fine-tooth comb. They ask good questions. I like being held accountable. That's good. Here. There are tiny little black lines, emphasizing the human form in this, but that's the only black in this painting, all right? So I use this painting in order to show the example. Like you can clearly see there's different forms here. There's, oh, look, I can make it bigger. There's different forms here. There's different things that are going on. All of the details that you're able to perceive and the shapes and the forms in this painting, you're able to perceive through contrast of different colors. So it's not like you have to have a black background to be able to see that something is orange, or that something is yellow, or that something is, green. Like these colors themselves are able to distinguish themselves. You're able to distinguish enough of the color versus itself. You don't have to have evil. So let me go back to my face. So this is the idea. This is kind of religious mania. Darkness is our teacher, shadow self, embrace the pathogens. We have to have these evil beings in order to teach us in some way. And I say, no. Like, you can be surrounded by wonderful, good, loving people, and you can learn and thrive and grow all the lessons that you need to grow. You're not supposed to be surrounded by psychopaths. You don't need to be like, I get to show who I really am because I'm surrounded by psychopaths, like, being surrounded by darkness or something like that so that you stand out more. I mean, like, no, you really don't need that. That is not my approach. That is not my presumption approach of the great composer that created all of this. So wait, to the comments over here. So that is it. So yeah. Wait. Oh, so many interesting things. So wait. So also, Angel, one more thing that I want to say, because part of your question says, is there a way to transmute the negative parasites into another type of expression? So not only are we talking about the distortion thought that says darkness must exist in order for light to exist, but also the distortion thought that says, can we change darkness to be more like light? And that is totally antithetical to the entire Flying Rainbow Lasagna approach. Because my approach, who I am, and my collective, and everything about my value system, it's all about unconditional love and freedom. Unconditional love does not mean hugging a pathogen. It means acceptance of a person's characteristics. Like if you're a snake and you're full of venom and you bite people, like, that's who you are. Those are your characteristics. That's who you are and what you do. Oh God, I don't know what I just had on me. Yeah, who you are and what you do, and you just say that's who you are. You ain't gonna be like a fluffy kitty. That's not your characteristic. That's not who and what you are. So it's not right. No, the words that I'm choosing are like blah, blah, blah. Right's not right. The right word. It is incorrect. Blah blah. How can I say this in the right way? It's ineffective. It's not the right approach to say, hey, this guy's evil over here. I'm gonna do something and make him into good. That's not what I do with Flying Rainbow Lasagna. This is not a magic wand that I wave like Wonder Woman. Wave a magic wand, poof, and now everybody who once was evil is now not evil. No, this is actually the solution to how we can understand duality as being both subsets of God or divinity, where in this shape, this central convergence point here gets vibrated up and down. The singularity, it's the zeroth dimension. We spent a lot of time on it in level 1. That's like saying I have 2 different viewpoints out of my eyes. This viewpoint and this viewpoint, right? I have this viewpoint when the singularity is up here, and then I have this viewpoint when the singularity is over here. And they're both the singularity. They're both the zeroth dimension. They're both the convergence point, the overlappingness of everything, the place where we all are. They're both that place, but it's just that place is moving, it's oscillating, it's up and down, and that place has different qualities. This is energy, overlappingness, beingness, being aware of stuff, existing, and this is non-existence. And that's like saying that the singularity flickers in and out of existence, that it does this oscillation. I'm here, I'm not here. I'm here, I'm not here. And this is how we can do stuff. We can do something with the pathogens that aren't even supposed to be in existence. The guys that said, F you to God, like, get me out of here, get me out of the nucleus. I don't belong in the cell nucleus, get me out of here, eject. And they ejected, and now they're stuck on the membrane of death like these bugs splattered on the windshield. What do we do with them? The answer is you send them to entropy, which is not the same as energy. So if you meet this thing that is a negative parasite and you're like, I want to transmute you, like it is well intentioned, it is a noble intention, but it ain't the right thing, because this would be the direction of going towards energy, and this is the direction of going towards entropy. So let's say you're like, I'm going to make you go towards the light, I'm going to save you, I'm going to bring you towards the light, and you're actually taking them like 5 miles outside of their journey. You're like making them 5 miles go uphill, 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 dragging them towards the light, and that's not where they're supposed to go. Maybe what they're actually supposed to do is to devolve, to lose consciousness, to become less and less and less self-aware as they go into profound states of entropy where they lose all energy, all sense of being, don't exist, don't move through time, and they achieve unity consciousness as a Bose-Einstein condensate. So although it might be well-meaning to say, like, just scoop them all up and send them to the light, that ain't what you're actually supposed to do. What you're supposed to do is make a distinction and say, just like there's 2-lane highways, some of these cars are going this way, some of these cars are going this way. Some of these consciousnesses are going towards energy, and some of these consciousnesses are going towards entropy. And the artistry and the wisdom is in recognizing that and making the accurate assessment. Who's going in which direction? Who's going in which direction? So clearly, if a person like wants to jump out of, you know, their doldrums and go towards energy, then you would say, okay, they're going in this direction. But, you know, you can't force someone to go where you want to go or where you perceive is right for you. You might also think your trajectory towards energy is everybody's trajectory towards energy. It ain't. This is not a one-size-fits-all solution. You have a unique trajectory through time. So for you to go from where you are presently in this moment to go all the way into this totally energetic state that we would call divine union, you have your unique trajectory. And all you really need to do is look out the windshield of your own car and have your own steering wheel in your life and drive there with your own DNA dance. And that's it. You don't have to like tell anybody else what to do or make them go in any particular direction. It's really all about you achieving, you know, your culminative point. Daniela says, a Rastafari once told me it's okay to kill mosquitoes because they're vampires. I kind of agree. I have a very firm policy of boundaries with insects. If they try to eat me or if they try to eat my food, I will kill them. Because like you try to like, if they like crawl all over my food and then my food becomes inedible, then I'm like, hey, like that is a survival thing. You know, flies are disease vectors. They are not your friends. You can't be like, oh, flies, like you're just part of nature. I know that you have to digest compost heaps and poop. Like, yes, because we now need them to digest compost heaps and poop. But like, if they crawl on your food, they are disease vectors. They will get you. Hold on a second. Let me just get a little bit of water here. Hold on. Yeah, so you do not want flies to be around. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to hug and kiss flies and I'm going to grow a maggot farm, because I think that that would be expressing a very enlightened opinion about the world. Like, no, don't have a maggot farm. They should not be your pets. Thank you very much for your participation, Pedro. You had to go. And Julia says, reptiles see in black and white. That is very interesting. I didn't know about that, about their perception. Patricia says, there is a difference between darkness in terms of evil or aberration, then contrast that creates form. And I can agree and understand that too. You know what? It is very similar, like when I tell people negative space. When I say like, oh, the negative space in a sculpture, and they think that I'm talking about negative, bad, wrong, evil, but I'm really just talking about like the place where the water goes in the coffee cup. So I would say that there can be something like absence of consciousness or ignorance that is not malevolent? And how would we classify that behaviorally? If I am non-malignant or non-malevolent ignorance, I happily achieve intelligence. Like, I'm not going to say if I'm ignorant and I'm healthy, if I'm not going to say, I don't want to learn that, I don't want to grow and change. I would say, I want to learn, I want to grow and change, because that would be literally bringing me more light and more intelligence. I would transform from my dark or obscured or ignorant state. That is really, really different than some people who say, I'm dark, I am the shadow, I want to stay the shadow, I don't want to know stuff, I want to remain ignorant. So you understand, so these would be two different things behaviorally. And Julia makes an interesting point, says the Masons put out the dark light lie, so-called spirituality. I know, there's been a lot of heavy infiltration. There's been a lot of infiltration and manipulation via the conventional religions, Judeo-Christianity and Buddhism and Hinduism and Islam, all of that totally manipulative in terms of consciousness and your journey and spirituality and what is truth. And then we also have secret societies such as the Masons or the Illuminati or these other occult kind of scavenger societies where they just look for magical recipes that work. They just care about what works. They're just very pragmatic. That they've done a lot of social engineering too in terms of putting out falsehoods in terms of what is forgiveness, because that's what the whole thing is. Evil freaking beings that are demonic invented religions. They harmed you and everyone that you love. They gave you a false program that not only are they your saviors, but that if they ever do anything wrong, that you're required to quote unquote forgive them and totally, I want to use crude language, they'll say kiss their butts and forgive them, and that you're not allowed to be mad or seek vengeance or anything like that. And also this whole thing about how darkness is necessary for teaching you, and these are your teachers, and you're supposed to kiss their butts and thank you for like raping and murdering you for millions of years. Like, no, you're not supposed to do any of those things. No, you are not supposed to appreciate your parasites. No, and you can tell by my, delivery and my sarcasm here, like I'm trying to be lighthearted about this, and my delivery shows that, but it's like, no, these are disgusting propositions, to have to like hug your rapist and be like, oh, I love and forgive. Be like, no, you know what you should do? You should, whatever. You should seek vengeance. Hold on a second. When I say seek vengeance, you know that I'm being joking here. No, you should enforce cosmic law where you say everything that you send out comes back to you instantaneously and amplified. I think that's one of the best things to do. Okay, so moving on. Pedro says, so in the higher dimensions and the ascension timeline, there are no places with absence of light. Light fills all. Yes, and here's what you really need to understand. Light is intelligence. When we say light fills all, I'm not just talking about like a light bulb. Light. It's not just like light, oh, and now I can see things and I can like do my crocheting more easily. We're talking about intelligence. I say this in this class all the time. Photons come through the sun and the stars. The suns and stars are portals, and that photons are feelers. They're not just these little stupid dead scientific particles that, science recognizes photons are light and they're this and they're that. They're alive and they're conscious and they're the sensory organs of a much, much larger being. And so in this timeline that Pedro describes, higher dimensional or the ascension timeline, this exalted experience where we eat pure light. Yes, all that exists is light. There does not have to be darkness. So what that means is all that exists is intelligence. It is not necessary to have lack of intelligence or unbeing, or what we would say is that unbeing goes into a state of entropy, and that would not be perceived as a state of darkness. That would be perceived as a state of frozenness in time. Now I'm going to freeze myself in time. I can't talk to you guys because I'm frozen in entropy. And what it would look like to you if I actually were frozen in entropy, you wouldn't even see me standing there like that. First I'd freeze, and then I'd disappear. And this is what is actually happening in our world as our multidimensional reality is being focused by the lens of consciousness. Certain beings are being sent into a totally entropic state. And that means that first they will become frozen and they will no longer move through time, and then they will disappear from your freaking perception. This is very, very different than saying that they're going to have a guillotine and have their heads chopped off or be blown up with napalm. None of that stuff. You know that I'm not into any of that stuff. I hope that the algorithm expresses that truth. I'm a totally nonviolent rainbow artist. Thank you. Patricia says, Duality as manifestation principles pertaining to the world of form. Just like the Merkaba has two interpenetrating tetrahedra, yes, one represents masculine, one represents feminine. They both are needed for manifestation. Good, good, good. Equal and opposites, exactly, like sending out and receiving. And this is what is meant by light and dark being necessary for creation. Light equals masculine, dark equals feminine, not evil, but energetic principle, just like the downward facing tetrahedron of Merkaba. That would be the correct interpretation of darkness. But then when we get into the intentional Babylon distortions, there are some people who are like, oh, I'm dark, but I'm not evil. I'm just embracing my shadow self. I'm just goth. I'm just this. I'm just that. And it's like, you know something? It's such an intentionally slippery slope. It's like when you start to see how they're labeling things on food, like we'll call it this, and then we'll call it this, and then we'll call it this. It's like, you know what, they just call it crap. You know what it is, just call it crap. So I'm not trying to be down on the goth community, like that, because sometimes I talk about heavy metal. I'm not a huge fan of heavy metal either. I'm not down on your music. But just this idea of like receptivity does not mean darkness. Ignorance is not the same as darkness, malevolent, evil. There can be things that you don't necessarily know about yourself, but that are not evil. There are areas of ignorance or blind spots. That is very, very different than being pathogenic. Pathogenic is like, I want to pick up a machete and chop off people's faces. And, you know, having, you know, whatever aspect of self that you're blinded by is like, I never really knew how much I enjoyed tuba music before until I heard this song. You know, like I just learned about myself. That is great. Like your areas of ignorance do not have to be psychopathological is what I'm trying to say. That a lot of people try to make it appear in that way. Like, oh, if you could see the back of your own head, you know, you'd be Charles Manson too. Like you'd be Hitler, like you'd be a psychopath. Like, no, actually, no, maybe you wouldn't. Maybe the back of your own head looks like a perfectly nice, normal person who just likes tuba music. This is what I'm trying to say. So don't embrace pathogenic behavior. Don't justify and excuse pathogenic behavior. That's not what a real human being is. That's not the real you. That's not the real world that we're supposed to live in. We're not supposed to be these whatever expressions of psychopathology on the planet. We're supposed to be beautiful expressions of divine grace, living in a peaceful, heavenly, harmonious world on the planet. We're not supposed to want to chop anybody's face with a machete. That ain't the real you. Mini Man says, wait, I skipped someone. Patricia says, there is a difference between dark as evil and dark as contrast. Yeah, so we're good. We're doing well, but we're still facing some issues with just language and stuff like that. Mini Man is saying, so the yin and yang is also not true. There's only light, good life, death, no death, black aberration. I say that in my teaching, because my teaching does not involve the necessity of driving off the road 10,000 times before you finally reach the ascension timeline and stay on the road and be a divine being. So I think that it is a very erroneous teaching to say, oh yes, death is inevitable, death is necessary, we run on the hamster wheel 10 million trillion times, and that's part of the balance of life, and then eventually you'll get out of here. No, I keep singing that song, out of this place, we gotta get out of this place. If it's the last thing we ever do, I'm just being so silly right now, I'm kind of tired, but you know something, we do gotta get out of this place, but get out of this place means transform on a genetic level and have a different perception and experience of time. Oh, Miss Plugin, hello, my dear. I think you are new to the class. Thank you. I love you. Thank you for being here. She says, hey, Aurora, can you explain what do you mean exactly with unconditional love? It's not about being passive, right? Totally not. My little piano is not hooked up. I don't know what button I need to press to make it work. But if my piano were working, I would say, ding, unconditional love is a tone. It's a tone that we make when we fly through time. So yeah, it's a literal tone. Unconditional love is like, la. It is the tone that we make when we are moving through time, through those little train cars of reality, when we're making those jumps at exactly the right rate. That means we are not focusing our attention on anything that happened in the past, and we're not grasping and anticipating at anything in the future. It's like being on the beat. You're doing it at the right moment. It is cosmic lovemaking. So the tone that you make is the end result of cosmic lovemaking done the right way. And I have to say that because there's a lot of angry, unhappy sex that goes on down here. We're not talking about that kind of sex. We're talking about cosmic love making, where you are the experiencer and your partner is literally the cosmic time field, the metabolism of time, and you are moving through time, the fields of possibilities and probabilities in very beautiful movements that are exactly in alignment with this larger symphony. And then when you do that, you make la, beautiful tone. And that music is literally a food. That's the music that myself and my higher dimensional collective and many other beings and the time field itself literally lives on that music. That is the primary nutrition, or you could call it the currency. Like electrons flowing in a wire is the currency here on Earth. If you want to have a light bulb that works, you need electrons flowing in a wire. If you want to make your consciousness flow through time, you'll need the currency of love. And that's it. So unconditional love, it's associated with this energy center on the body, right here on the chest. It's a tone that you make when your body is in tune and when you're moving through time in just the right way. When you achieve that tone, it turns you into a frictionless perpetual motion machine where you continue to be able to simply move through time in this frictionless presence. And love is also an equal, behaviorally, it is expressed as an equal giving and receiving. And that is also in terms of abstract energy. Like if I give out 10 units of energy and I receive 10 units of energy, that is love. I give you $10 and you give me back $10, that is love. Any of these equal, because love is a reverberation that continues through time. So if I send you 10 units and you only send me 5 units, that's not sustainable. It doesn't keep going. It's not perpetual motion. It fades over time. So in order for something to be love, it has to be an equal exchange, an equal give and take. And that can be difficult to figure out. What is that behaviorally? Like if you give me $10, how many is $10 of tomatoes or potatoes? We have to kind of figure that out and work that out. But it's the intention for an equal giving and receiving behaviorally. And that's also an abstract expression. So I say all the time, love is not just like a romantic ideal. When I talk about it, it is also not this idea like you are supposed to hug someone. When you love a demon, that you can say, I love and accept who you are as a demon. I don't want to hug you. Like, do you want to hug like a parasite? Do you want to hug the Ebola virus? No. If you love Ebola, you accept that it is a toxic thing. You can't hug it. Don't hug it. So love, unconditional love is not romantic love. It is not mammalian love. It is expressed behaviorally through acceptance of basic characteristics. So that also means, like, if you're the Ebola virus, you're not a fluffy bunny. You are not a pet. You should not be in somebody's home. Like, you belong, locked up in a petri dish, not in somebody's home as a pet. So acceptance means, like, if somebody's like screwed up, they are who they are. You don't try to stop and make them be less of who they are. They are who they are. And you allow people to be who they are. Those are big lessons to learn about humanity. Pedro says, I remember in a past semester that some putis could be healed. It's possible most will go to entropy. Yes, some of them can be healed. That door is always open. And that's why I created Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And it's why I've been here for about 18 years telling everybody about this. At a certain point, though, all trains have left the station. And we're kind of at that point. Those nodes or jumping off places or exits from the highway of time existed around 2015. For these beings that existed on the interstices. Like if they were like, oh, we're so sorry, we've been horrible toothy monsters eating babies for millions of years and raping people, we're sorry, like, give us a chance. Like, those timelines existed like back in 2015. And they don't really exist right now, because in order to, like, it's like being a turncoat in a war. To be like, I don't really want to be an evil Nazi anymore. Like, you got to be like, okay, that's cool. But you got to give us like secret access codes. Like, you want to be a whistleblower, that's fine. Like, you're going to have to give us access to your system. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I killed a lot of people, but now I regret my choices. Let me into heaven. You can't do that. So you have to make actual efforts to rectify what you did. So some of these really profoundly evil beings, if they wanted to be healed, what they would have had to do is start years ago and actually do stuff to rectify the things that they did that hurt people and killed people and mutilated them. Like, I can't express in words, like, really the worst crimes you could possibly imagine. You can't just give people a free pass. So yeah, they would have to work super, super, super hard. So let's say today's the day of the marathon and these guys weigh 500 pounds overweight. And it's like, okay, good. You want to start training for the marathon? That's awesome. You have like 1 minute. We're about to start running the marathon right now, and you're 500 pounds overweight. There's no way for those guys to ever lose 500 pounds in 1 minute and be ready for the marathon. But if it started like 5 years ago, they might have been ready for the marathon today, but not today. So those nodes are no longer available. This offer not available in stores. Though is this just every time, timing is everything, guys. This is music. You have to be playing on the beat. If you don't play on the beat, then you cannot be part of the music. And those songs are no longer available. Patricia says, how do you explain the death of nature? Is nature an aberration? No, nature is not an aberration at all. A plant grows and then dies. So you think because you're looking at the life cycle of biology right now in this aberrant world that that's normal, but that doesn't have to be normal. So you don't have to have plants that have a life cycle that grow, just like you don't have to have the microbiome making plants grow in a different world where everybody eats pure light. So it's not a biological realm. It's a consciousness realm where there are different rules than the realm of biology. So in the realm of biology, there's, the seasons where things grow and the seasons where they die, and there's composting and there's microbiome. There's no microbial activity or digestion on a cellular level when you're in the higher dimensional state and everything eats pure light. That's it. That's it. And so just think about the cascade of if-thens. If that's true, then this true. If that's true, then this true. If-thens. There's no yogurt, because you ain't going to have little microbes that digest your food for you and then you eat them. That's it. Okay? Yeah. Miniman says, what about Scientology? Scientology is completely a scam. Stay away from it. It's a super dangerous cult. Don't go anywhere near them. Okay. Julia says, all religions are MK corrupted here. Death cults. Completely agree. I have a teaching all about death cults. David, gotta go. Much love. Thank you so much. Thank you for your homework. You're wonderful. Hans says, had a big stack of strong neodymium magnets on the wrist and does those excellent. And Brandon says, I think part of our dualistic tendencies have to do with our perspectives in this dimension. One gender or another, yes, very biological. Also, we are all fundamentally connected, so the individual versus unified entity adds to this sense. Being disconnected from unity as an individual. That's it, that the ego becomes this cellophane wrapper that temporarily disconnects you from your world, and then it takes a reconnection. And the reconnection event can be something like a profound disease, or taking a lot of LSD or mushrooms, or doing a flying rainbow lasagna dance, where you break through that cellophane wrapper and you're like, wait a minute, I'm not separate from my environment at all. I'm part of my environment. And you would even call that magic. That's what magic is. When you're like, wait a minute, I thought something inside of me and then the world responded. Like, that is real. That actually happens. That's normal. Thank you, Daniela. Thank you very much. Patricia says the game of separation was originally intended to experience expansion of the world of form, not suffering as it has been. Yes, yes, yes. I love you. You're totally getting it. That's in terms of the 0th dimension into 1st dimension. When the distortion is removed, the duality that creates is not evil. The Merkaba is a divine expression of duality as a manifestation principle. Exactly. That there are two separate things that are going on here. We can have a world of duality that is balanced, where everything is healthy, pretty much like pre-infestation, the way that our world was structured. And, there's balance, it balances in every single aspect of life. And then now we've experienced, a hijacking of the entire system, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, the balance, when it's balanced, it can be beautiful. Flying rainbow lasagna is the way to get it unhacked. So when we unhack, like, you then get to make choices. And like in a painting, I can make a choice. How much red do I want to put in the painting? How much blue? How much brown? Like, how much murky brown do I want to put in a painting? The answer for me is always 0. I have 0 amount of like murky poop brown color that I want to put into any of my paintings. So I think we're getting into this expression now where in our bodies, on our planet, and in the time field, we get to choose, what do we want to manifest? Murky, poopy brown? No, that would be like death and disease and sorrow and all of the distortions, what Patricia spoke about, I think, really eloquently. That was not part of the original blueprint, that's not a necessary part of life. That's not the compost making these roses grow. That's what I'm trying to say to all of us, that we might have this flawed presumption based in our present biological condition, that compost and shit and poop and suffering is necessary to make the roses of who we are as people grow. And I think that's a highly erroneous presumption, because I know that we can grow through joy. I know that we can grow not by like you just think, I've had a lot of losses in my life. I have a lot of friends who are in their 30s and 40s and they died far too young. Like, they died of cancer and stuff like that. And it's like, that doesn't have to happen in order for me to blossom as a person. But there's a lot of things that are these kind of mental programs that try to justify and excuse what is, not justifiable. The suffering is not necessary. This didn't have to happen. So you could also, of course, turn it into something beautiful. I do that all the time in a painting. Like you put your elbow in the paint and then, oh my God, and now this is like this. We're just gonna have to turn that into something beautiful because this is like a major mistake. So you can do stuff like that if you're an artist and if you're a virtuoso. But no, I really don't think that suffering and I don't think that challenge, that those challenges and that pain is necessary for us to reach our greatest levels of artistry. I really, really feel that we can reach our greatest levels of artistry through joy and through, being encouraged, not through like being, smashed down and through being discouraged. Yeah, Patricia says, thank you for the clarification between the bio and consciousness. So many hangups due to speech. Clarification is important. Thank you. God, go do it. Go. I think we are complete for the class because I know both of these are long recordings. Let me say thank you for everybody in the chat asking these excellent questions. Thank you to everybody who's been turning in their homeworks. And oh my goodness, I realized I did not do in level 1 the homework assignment. And now I'm all recording on level 2. So I'll write this all out in an email. Oh, I'm terrible. I should have really recorded this in level 1. Oh my goodness. Okay, everybody's still here. Let me pull up the picture that I want to pull up. This is some of, perfect. These are from student work from so there's homework 1 from the first week, homework 2. Now this is homework 3. Homework 3, everyone. I'm finally getting to the meat and potatoes here. Let me do a share screen and show you, ask for you what I want. Perfect. So you have done homework 1, just to clarify, was to just draw one of these circles, right, with the basic harmonic proportions. Homework 2 was doing 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and doing them in these radial spokes at 90-degree angles, right? And then the homework 3 that I'm now giving you as your assignment is you can do just a drawing like a skeleton drawing. And I also want you to start connecting these edges and making them into vortexes. So I want you to repeat this same drawing where you've got, I'm trying to do too many things at once and talk with my mouth. Hold on, let me just draw. It's very hard to control this little digital pen. You see where I'm going with this? All right, so I want you to start making all of these connections that actually turn this from a flat cross section into a series of vortexes. And you're gonna do one that goes through here. I'm not gonna do it all the way around. You're gonna do one that goes through here. So there's a total of 7. You will do one for each layer. And you are beginning to learn, this is like the skeletal structure of how your chakras are shaped. And let's see if I can move to a different picture that I had all prepared over here. Where's that picture? Where's that picture? It was right here. It's behind us. Yeah. It's gonna end up looking like this. Oh, can you see that? I hope you can see that down there where I'm wiggling this guy. So your homework will end up looking like a series of nested vortices when you connect those lines and turn this from something flat into something 3-dimensional. Apologies for not getting that into the level 1 recording, and I will write that out laboriously so that everybody knows, and I'm happy that I did remember. Good. So, okay, end of the recording for right now, and thank you very much for everybody who's been participating and turning in their homeworks. You're awesome, and I love to see your work. Thank you.